So before I begin this video, I just want to say that this video isn't made with the intention of me trying to point out the hypocrisy in others while also discrediting my own or disacknowledging my own. I'm very well aware of the fact that there's no such thing as a perfect human being and that ultimately we're all imperfect creatures, as cliche as that may sound. But this video is actually for me to point out one flaw that actually can be worked on. Who are you when nobody's looking? And who are you when nobody's around? And what kind of person are you behind closed doors? Is the person that you are and the actions that you take and the decisions that you make and the way that you talk to others the same as the way that you act in public? Are you the same saint that you are in public as you are behind closed doors? Are you the same terrible person that you act like in public behind closed doors? Who are you when nobody's watching and who are you when nobody's around? You know, I forgot which video I came across recently, but the video essentially went over the main idea that if you really are trying to figure out who you are or really trying to figure out your true identity, just analyze who you are when nobody's watching. And I wanted to make a video on this because I believe that that is a really deep introspective question to ask yourself. Who are you when nobody's looking? And I think it kind of revolves around another quote too, and I forgot who said this quote, but the quote is, "I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am, but I am what I think you think I am." And I think that the whole meaning behind that quote is that we place so much emphasis on what other people think about us that we ultimately forget what we think about ourselves. And we get caught up in this loophole, this void of constantly being concerned with what other people think about us. Actually, not what other people think about us based on the quote, but what we think other people think about us. And that's such a fascinating loophole to kind of ponder over and think about, is we spend so much time thinking about what other people think about us. And the irony about that is that what we think what other people think about us is not actually what other people think about us. I want to give a story, I just thought of a story off the top of my head right now, but I want to give this story, So in my last video, if any of you guys watched it, or to the people who may or may not come across this video, my last video, I kind of went over grief and essentially kind of provided my own sentiments or kind of provided my own thoughts as to how I'm processing my dad's late passing back in May or this past summer. And, long story short, my dad passed away from cancer, and I kind of just used that video to talk about grief and to ultimately just use that video to ultimately be a source of therapy for me and just ultimately express how it is I'm truly feeling and, use that as a means to also maybe provide the opportunity for other people who may or may not be going through the same thing as me to find a place of comfort, to find a source of comfort, and to ultimately let other people know who may or may not come across that video that they're not alone. So back in May, or actually even prior to May, when my dad's whole, I guess you could say, cancer diagnosis was first provided to us by his oncologist. Obviously, to anybody who may or may not come across this video, when you're going through cancer or when you have a family member who's going through cancer, there's going to be a lot of trips that you have to take, where you have to drive that family member to the hospital to receive cancer treatments. And it can be a long and grueling process, to see this family member or this significant other or even this friend that you love and that you admire so much go through such a significant physical ailment that you ultimately have no control over. For someone like me who's so used to having control, not being in control was very, very scary for me. It was very, very scary for me to acknowledge and to have to accept that ultimately it's all in God's hands ultimately. And this is something completely out of my control. All I can do is just ultimately be the best son that I can possibly be, and to ultimately look after my dad's health as best as I can, and to ultimately be a vessel of strength for him, and to ultimately motivate him, and to try to keep his spirits high, and ultimately pray to God every single day. And the bigger picture here is that in my dad's whole cancer journey, or in my whole dad's cancer process, there were many times where I thought of the type of person that I wanted to be, right? And this sounds really effed up to say, right? But during that whole time and during that whole process of constantly taking my dad to the hospital to receive his cancer treatments and to, go over discussions with his oncologist on how how is cancer's progressing, if it's getting any better at all, or if it's advancing. There were many times in that hospital where I thought to myself, and this sounds really messed up to say, to think about, and I'm not proud of this, and I'm sharing this because I want people to learn from my mistakes, as I shared in the last video as well. There were many times in the hospital or on the drive down to the hospital where I thought to myself, when is somebody going to give me a pat on the back, right, for doing all these things? I have to balance going to university, balance taking difficult courses and rigorous courses, and ultimately trying to get the best grades possible, while also being involved in extracurricular activities like clubs and, looking for internships and whatnot, and ultimately getting certificates and anything down associated with adding to your resume, being a college student or a university student. I thought to myself, when is somebody ever going to give me credit for all these things that I'm doing, right? Like, when is somebody going to give me a pat on the back? I just wish someone could be watching over me and saying, and tell me, keep going, you're going to be okay, and I'm so proud of you. And, my family's not known for being the most affectionate, right? But we show our affection in other ways, like, through acts of service. It all has to do with the different love languages, I guess you could say. And I thought to myself throughout that whole process, when is somebody going to give me the credit that I deserve? And that's a very egotistical question to ask yourself, especially when your dad's going through cancer. But it's true, because I thought to myself, there were many nights where I had to rush my dad to the hospital at 12 a.m. because of, he had liver cancer. So I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but using my dad's experiences as a personal anecdote to provide, my dad went through a lot of stomach pain late at night, and I had to rush him to the hospital at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and I had to stay in the hospital until 6 a.m. in the morning, being unable to sleep. And then I had class that day too. And I thought to myself, when is anybody going to give me my flowers or give me credit? Then I had this ultimate realization, and it kind of hit me towards the end of, unfortunately, my dad's time, to put it bluntly. In those moments when I asked myself those questions, I didn't realize it, but those moments really define someone's character. And it ultimately inspired me to make this video today. And those moments taught me that those restless nights, those moments of worry and wondering, when am I ever going to get the credit I deserve, whether I realized it or not, those moments define my character and ultimately define who I am, and define who I am as a son, as a young man, as a young man who's barely entering his process of manhood. And there's no better way to enter the process of manhood by, losing a parent, essentially. And it's those moments, those restless nights, and those late nights driving my dad to the hospital, constantly worrying about his health, and, to put it bluntly, praying constantly and tearing up from time to time during my prayers of, revolving around my dad's health and worrying about my dad's health. But those moments defined who I am when nobody else was watching and only God was watching. And that's what I want to leave you with, right? Is that I want you to use my mistakes as a reference to not make the same mistakes that I did, and to ultimately learn the lessons that I learned very early on in your life, or depending on how old you are, and to digest those lessons, and to ultimately digest the principle that who you are and how you act when nobody's watching ultimately defines your character. And gives you all the confidence you need to keep on moving forward in life, to keep on pushing through those trials and tribulations. Because there's no greater sense of assurance and greater sense of security than knowing who you truly are, knowing what you stand for. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm definitely not proud of asking myself that egotistical question while my dad was struggling with his health, because that shouldn't have been my main concern at all. My main concern should have been focused entirely on my dad and spending as much time with him as possible, as much time that I had with him left. I grew a lot from that, and I grew a lot, although he passed very recently, this past May, I grew a lot, and that's ultimately why I'm making this video, because we spend so much time worrying about what other people think about us. We spend so much time asking ourselves, who are we? That's the biggest question that circulates the whole self-improvement sphere. Who am I? What do I stand for? And what is my true identity? And maybe you can use my mistakes as a way to answer that question a lot easier. You are who you are when nobody is watching, right? And take comfort in that and take security in that. If you're someone who still chooses to commit good deeds without the expectation of being seen, it's the same thing as these YouTubers, right? Who go around in public and carry a $3,000 camera and have a whole camera crew behind them, filming themselves, handing out food in public to the homeless, and to use that as a mean to use that good gesture as a means to get views and to ultimately gain popularity and to gain subscribers, right? When in reality, we all know as viewers, right? Because viewers are smart. Although some viewers can be stupid and completely naive and clueless, right, towards the imperfections of the people that they admire, most viewers are not stupid and most viewers are not naive. Most viewers are actually smart and are smarter than they give themselves credit for. And most viewers realize that these people who go around in public filming themselves committing good deeds and good acts realize that these people are full of shit. That all they do is they just want the attention, they want the glory, and they want praise. They don't actually care about helping these people in need at all. Now, some of them may be filming these videos to actually inspire other people to commit good deeds, but most of them, I think we all know, are just doing it to gain views and to gain attention. I bring that up because when was the last time that you decided to help somebody behind closed doors without expecting praise, validation, or anything in return? And when was the last time you actually gave someone a compliment without expecting anything in return, but you genuinely wanted to just make that person's day? When was the last time you had a dispute with someone, a personal dispute with someone, and it was behind closed doors, and you could have shared that dispute with other people to make yourself look good and to paint yourself as the victor and to paint them as ultimately the enemy, but you chose to maintain this level of professionalism, this level of maturity, and you said, you know what, my dispute is between me and this person only, and it's nobody else's business, and I'm going to handle this like an adult. When was the last time you did all those things? Integrity is starting to become a very, very, very foreign concept in today's world. Integrity, principles and morals, and ultimately committing good deeds without expecting any divine reward or any praise or attention from anybody else. Right? We see it all the time. People nowadays on Instagram, these Instagram models, whether they're guys or girls, or these content creators or these influencers or even these celebrities, we see them all the time acting like saints in public but behind closed doors. And this is becoming more prevalent than ever, right? Especially in today's society where there's been an uprising of news and confessions about the true character of these celebrities being revealed by people who were once associated with them, by ex-colleagues, by ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends. We see it all the time how these celebrities who act like saints in public aren't actually saints at all and aren't actually the perfect human beings that we make them out to be. That's not only limited to celebrities, but also to every individual who's on this earth, every human being who's on this earth, right? Who are you when nobody's looking? Who are you when nobody's around, right? Because chances are the actions and the decisions that you make and take on a daily basis behind closed doors when nobody's around, those are the moments that actually define your character. And I'm not saying anything new. These things have been said time and time again. But as the banner of this channel entails, telling you what you need to hear, not telling you what you want to hear, right? So if that means that I have to constantly relay messages that have been said time and time again, then I'll do that as long as it spreads the good message along. We're living in a world today where people are more concerned with being seen than being right. It's a very, very scary world we're living in. People would rather be seen and praised than actually being right. And at the end of the day, all that matters is actually doing the right thing, not doing what you feel is right, not doing what society tells you to do, or not telling what society thinks is right, but doing what is actually right, no matter how painful it is. We're all hypocrites, right? I said in my last video that I'd be consistent with making videos, and the last video that I uploaded was over, I don't even know how long ago it was. It was a long time ago, over a month ago, I think, a couple of weeks ago, or more than a couple of weeks ago. I'm a hypocrite just as much as the next person is. Nobody is perfect, but it's the act of pursuing perfection that brings out the best in us, knowing that we'll never attain perfection, but it's the pursuit of it that actually matters, and that's what ultimately brings out the best in us. This flaw that we all have of acting one way behind closed doors, but acting one way in public, but acting completely different behind closed doors, is the one imperfection that we all can address and actually work on, and that'll ultimately bring out the best in us. I'm not here to point fingers and without looking at myself in the mirror and acknowledging my own flaws, because I have many flaws just as much as the next person does. We all have flaws. We all have insecurities. And ultimately, what I've learned in my 20 years of being alive so far, about to be 21 soon, is that everybody's full of shit. Everybody's full of shit. Nobody has it all figured out, and we're all learning as we go along the journey of life. We're all learning new lessons every single day of life that we're given. Nobody has it all figured out. I just wanted to make a video entailing those details and telling those themes. I ultimately appreciate anybody and everybody who comes across these videos. I just encourage everybody to maintain a level of integrity without expecting any reward. Good character is a very it's becoming more and more of a foreign concept in today's world, and it's very hard to come across honest people and people who keep their word, who don't let the external world change them and to compromise their values. It's very hard to come across people who do those things, but it is very easy to come across people who let the world corrupt them and let outside forces corrupt them, and who act one way in person but act completely different behind closed doors. It's very, very easy to come across people who act like that. The people that may or may not come across this video, maintain a level of integrity. Maintain a level of integrity behind closed doors. I don't know. I'm baffled by the world we live in today, the amount of hypocrites that are in the world today, me included. But all that matters is that you're aware of your hypocrisy and that you work to address it. So I thank you so much to who may or may not come across this video. I thank all of you guys who may or may not come across this video, and think about who you are behind closed doors. And if that person that you are behind closed doors aligns with the person that you act like in public. And if there's no alignment there, then you really need to make some adjustments in your character. And you really need to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, who do I want to become? And ultimately ask yourself, how do I want my character to be defined? Or what do I want my character to be defined as?